Hi, so we're just over 2 weeks into the second lockdown here, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about reading during lockdown. So if you like this, don't forget to subscribe. So I'm not going to talk about specific books in this video because I think everyone has such different tastes, and especially at a time like this, it's not really the right time to be being specific about what books to read. But I thought I'd talk more generally about reading, because one might imagine that during a situation which is stressful like this, reading may be a refuge that we all could turn to. I know for me, it's certainly been a life raft in times of crisis and in times of need. But I know a lot of people are really struggling to read during lockdown, so I thought I'd look a little bit at why that might be and some strategies perhaps to deal with it. I think the big problem with reading at a time like this is it can be really difficult to focus. It is an incredibly stressful time. I mean, we've had most of this year lived under the shadow of the virus and lockdown of varying degrees. And unlike sort of some of life's more stressful situations, this is a kind of lower level stress maybe, but one that's continuous, which I think can affect you in different ways. And so I think it can be difficult to focus on a book for any prolonged period of time. First thing I'd say is there's nothing wrong with taking yourself away and locking the door, either literally or metaphorically, and saying, you know, I'm reading. I think reading is one of those interesting things that often when you do it, especially if you're surrounded by people who aren't readers perhaps, often when you read, people can assume that you're just free to be disturbed or to be, to ask questions of and so on, in a way that they wouldn't if you were perhaps doing something else like watching a film, playing football, or I don't know, you know. I think in those situations, no one would come up to you on the football pitch and start to talk to you about what you might want for dinner. I think for some reason when you're reading, people can assume that you're just available. So there's nothing wrong with just locking the door, just saying, I'm going to take myself off to read for a while, and creating that space for yourself. I think in terms of what to read, I would say have a think about what fantasy means to you. I think escapism can be really helpful at the moment. And escaping into a fantasy world. I don't necessarily mean dragons and wizards and so on, although there's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But I mean, I suppose just whatever fantasy means to you. It could be historical fiction, could be science fiction, anything really, but just something that perhaps takes you away from your ordinary everyday life. So that's, I think, one thing to bear in mind. Another thing which could be helpful is to think of a book project. So is there a book that you've been putting off reading, or you've had on your shelf for a long time and you've kind of looked at it and thought, well, that feels a bit like an undertaking. I know for me, for example, the Wolf Hall trilogy is something that I've been meaning to get around to for years now and haven't. So, I mean, it's unlikely that I will because I'm really busy at the moment, but perhaps lockdown is a time when you can tackle those books that have been kind of staring at you from the shelf and get those down and really get stuck in. I suppose similar to that is maybe think of a book series. There are a series of books. I know in one of my videos recently, Steve Kavanagh recommended the Ron Paul of the Bailey books, something like that. You know, pick a crime writer and read all of theirs in order, or not in order, you know. Delve into the Agatha Christie's, read Ian Rankin's books in order. Anything like that can really just be a project and something that you can escape to, a longer term thing that you can escape to. And if you're still struggling as well, it might also be worth considering swapping from fiction to non-fiction or back again. If you're normally a reader of fiction, then perhaps it might be interesting to read some of the non-fiction and vice versa. Just something to shake it up a little bit perhaps, and to give yourself a renewed vigour for reading. And I think finally, if all else fails, there's nothing wrong with going back to a childhood classic, something that you really loved as a child, and just rereading that perhaps. And seeing what you get from it this time. And again, it's all about escapism. Reading as a refuge, reading as a way of not thinking about what's going on. So anyway, I hope those help. Let me know in the comments if you've got any other points to make. Don't forget to subscribe, and also sign up to my mailing list because I'll be putting some stuff out there soon. So take care, look after yourself, and speak soon.